A billionaire's wife was dying in childbirth. Vivian Laurent Ashford had been in labor for 43 hours, and 12 world-class doctors had tried everything. Yale-trained obstetricians, Johns Hopkins specialists, Columbia's best maternal-fetal medicine experts. They'd exhausted every protocol, cycled through every intervention in their arsenal. Nothing worked. The baby was stuck. Posterior presentation, face up, wedged against the pelvis at an impossible angle. Surgery was the only option left, but Vivian's blood pressure was dangerously high, her body so broken from the prolonged labor that going under the knife could kill her. Time was running out for both mother and child. Then a black woman in faded cleaning scrubs holding a mop knocked on the delivery room door. Eartha Mae Williams had mopped these floors for 17 years. 17 years of being invisible, of scrubbing toilets and wiping down surfaces while doctors walked past her like she was furniture. But she'd been listening outside that door for the last 3 hours, and she knew exactly what was wrong. She'd heard it in the pattern of Vivian's screams, in the desperate voices of doctors running out of options. She knocked harder. When a nurse cracked the door open, exhausted and annoyed, Eartha spoke 5 words that should have gotten her arrested. "I can save your baby." No medical degree, no credentials from prestigious universities, just hands trained by 5 generations of black Southern midwives. Her grandmother had delivered over 500 babies in sharecropper cabins across Mississippi. Black women white hospitals refused to touch. Eartha herself had delivered more than 80 before she fled north, carrying knowledge that slavery had forced black women to master or watch their babies die. Preston Coleman Ashford, the white tech billionaire worth $18 billion, stared at her like she'd materialized from another dimension. His face twisted with disbelief and barely concealed contempt. "You want my wife treated by the cleaning lady?" he shouted. "When we have 12 of the best doctors in the country here." But Vivian, delirious with pain, her body racked by 43 hours of hell, locked eyes with Eartha. She saw something the expensive specialist lacked: certainty, calm, the absolute confidence of someone who actually knew what to do. "Let her try," Vivian whispered. Eartha had 5 minutes. 5 minutes to prove herself or lose everything: her job, her safety, possibly her freedom. She stepped into that luxury birthing suite, work-worn black hands about to touch white skin, about to attempt the impossible, while a room full of Ivy League doctors watched in frozen disbelief. What happened in the next 10 minutes would either make her a hero or destroy her completely, and it would force America to confront a question it had been avoiding for 400 years. Whose knowledge matters? Before we dive into this story, I need you to do me a favor. Comment where you are watching from. I want to see how far this addery reaches, and kindly subscribe to this channel, because stories like these are what we do here. Now let's continue. 3 hours earlier, Eartha Mae Williams was invisible. She'd perfected invisibility over 17 years, moved through hospital corridors like a ghost, eyes down, voice soft, Jonjay erased by necessity and design. Tonight she was mopping the hallway outside Manhattan Memorial's luxury birthing suite, the kind of place where billionaires paid $5,000 a night for marble bathrooms and cappuccino machines. The kind of place where women like her only existed to clean up after women like them. But Eartha had been listening through that door for 3 hours, not from nosiness, from knowing. She heard the doctors cycling through protocols, their voices growing more desperate with each failed intervention. Dr. Ashford's controlled professionalism cracking at the edges. Dr. Morrison barking orders that went nowhere. Nurses rushing in and out with equipment that wouldn't solve the problem. And underneath it all, Vivian's screams, shifting from the powerful roars of productive labor to something else, something defeated, something dying. Eartha recognized the problem instantly. Posterior baby, face up instead of down, tiny spine pressed against the mother's spine, stuck at an angle that made descent impossible. She'd heard it in the description of Vivian's back pain radiating down her legs, in the pattern of the baby's heart rate drops, in the way the doctors kept saying, "failure to progress," like it was a mystery. It wasn't a mystery. Eartha had caught 80 babies before she turned 25 in rural Mississippi, and at least a dozen of them had been posterior. Her grandmother had taught her to fix this problem when she was 14 years old. "Feel what the machines can't measure, baby," her grandmother used to say, placing Eartha's young hands on a laboring woman's belly. "The knowing lives in your fingers." Eartha looked at the closed door, then at the security guard stationed at the nurse's station, scrolling on his phone, then at her own reflection in the polished floor she'd just mopped. A middle-aged black woman in faded scrubs, face lined with exhaustion, hands rough from chemicals. The internal war started. Speak up and risk everything. Her job, her work permit, deportation back to the poverty she'd escaped. Stay silent and stay safe. Stay invisible. Stay in her place. But her grandmother's voice cut through the fear. "Baby, when you know the way and don't speak up, you're as guilty as them that caused the harm." Eartha's mind raced through the consequences. If she was wrong, fired, possibly arrested, family back home starving because she couldn't send money anymore. If she was right but failed, same outcome, plus the weight of trying and losing. If she was right and said nothing, a mother and baby would die and she would carry that weight forever, knowing she could have saved them but chose silence instead. Her hands started shaking, these work-worn hands that had scrubbed 1,000 toilets, mopped 1,000 floors, cleaned up blood and vomit and the debris of other people's lives. Hands that also remembered how to catch babies. Hands that knew things Yale and Johns Hopkins couldn't teach. She set down her mop, smoothed her faded scrubs that marked her as the help, took one breath, then another. Then Eartha Mae Williams knocked on the door. "What would you risk to save 2 lives when the world has spent 17 years teaching you that you're nobody?" Eartha had learned invisibility long before she came to New York. Growing up black and poor in the Mississippi Delta, invisibility wasn't a choice, it was a survival skill. She was the daughter of sharecroppers, granddaughter of sharecroppers, raised in a village so poor that being noticed by the wrong people could be dangerous. You kept your head down. You made yourself small. You survived. She came north 17 years ago, 3 weeks after her grandmother died. Everything she owned fit in one battered suitcase. She had $40 sewn into her coat lining and a cousin's address in Harlem, a cousin who, she discovered on arrival, had moved 6 months earlier and left no forwarding information. That first week in New York nearly broke her. She slept in a church basement, ate at food pantries, stood on frozen street corners, wondering if she'd made a terrible mistake. Then the employment agency called about a custodian position at Manhattan Memorial Hospital. "It's a miracle," the woman said. "Like minimum wage night shift work with no benefits was God's personal intervention. But it was legal work, a real paycheck. After 6 months, the hospital even helped her get a work permit." Eartha was so grateful she never complained. Not about the toilet she scrubbed, the blood she mopped, the vomit she cleaned at 3 a.m. while doctors stepped over her without a glance. Not about the nurses who looked through her like she was invisible, or the physicians who spoke about their patients' most intimate details in front of her as if she wasn't even human enough to understand confidentiality. She became an expert at making herself small, learned to speak proper English, smoothing out her Mississippi accent until it only surfaced when she was tired or scared. Never caused trouble. "Yes, ma'am. Right away. Sir, sorry to bother you." The language of invisibility, spoken fluently. But Eartha carried something those doctors didn't have. She carried 5 generations of black women's birth wisdom, knowledge that started with enslaved women who had no choice but to master birth or watch their babies die. Her grandmother had been the only midwife for black families in 3 counties for 35 years. She delivered over 500 babies in sharecropper cabins, attending to black women white hospitals refused to touch, working by kerosene lamp with nothing but her hands and knowledge passed down through generations. Grandmother lost only 5 babies in 35 years, and those 5 losses haunted her until the day she died. She'd tell Eartha their names, what went wrong, what she wished she'd known to do differently. Meanwhile, the white doctors in town, with 10 times the resources, sterile operating rooms, and fancy equipment, lost 3 times as many babies. But white folks called her grandmother's work granny medicine, superstition, folk remedies, not real health care. So when Eartha came north, she buried that knowledge deep, let it go silent. What good was being a healer in a world that had decided you were nobody? What use was wisdom when the very people who needed it most had been trained not to see you? For 17 years, she'd made peace with it, or told herself she had, until tonight. Eartha's grandmother started teaching her when she was just 9 years old. Didn't ask permission, didn't ease into it, just announced one morning while they were shelling peas on the porch. You got the hands, baby, I can see it. The knowing lives in your fingers, just like it lived in mine. Eartha didn't understand what that meant until her first birth at age 14. A neighbor went into labor at 3 a.m., no time to get to the black clinic 30 miles away. Her grandmother brought her to that small cabin, positioned her trembling young hands on the laboring woman's belly, and taught her to feel things that couldn't be seen. Baby's position, contraction strength, the exact moment intervention was needed, the moment when only patience would do. By 16, Eartha was attending births on her own. By 18, she had a reputation. Women requested her specifically, would walk for hours through Mississippi heat to have Eartha's hands guide their babies into the world. She delivered twins during a thunderstorm with only a kerosene lamp for light. Turned a breech baby using techniques her grandmother learned from her grandmother. Gentle manipulations that convinced the child to flip without surgery. Saved a hemorrhaging mother using herbs and pressure points American doctors would call folk remedies, if they bothered to call them anything at all. Even the white doctors in town started referring their black patients to Eartha. They wouldn't admit black women to the hospital, but they knew Eartha could handle complications they couldn't. Knowledge without credentials, expertise without degrees. It worked until it didn't matter anymore. Then the violence came. Gangs recruiting young men, killing the ones who refused. Her nephew murdered for saying no. Her brother disappeared, never found. Her sister-in-law threatened, children in danger. The Delta became a place where being black and visible meant being a target. Her grandmother was dying when Eartha made the choice to leave. Last words whispered from a bed that smelled like death and dignity. Baby, you take what I taught you and you honor it. Don't let them make you forget what you know. Don't let our knowledge die. It was the hardest choice Eartha ever made, leaving behind everyone she loved, abandoning the sacred calling that defined her existence. Coming to America where her knowledge meant nothing, where her experience counted less than zero, where hands that had caught 80 babies were only good for scrubbing toilets. 17 years as a custodian. 17 years of mopping floors while doctors who didn't know half of what she knew about birth walked past without a glance. She'd made peace with it, she told herself. It was the price of safety, of survival, of sending money home so her sister-in-law's children could eat. But tonight, standing outside that door, listening to Vivian scream and that baby dying, something cracked open in Eartha's chest. The part of her that was a midwife, a healer, a woman who understood birth the way a musician understands symphony, the way a river understands its banks. That part had been silent for 17 years, buried under invisibility and survival, and the weight of a world that refused to see her. That part refused to stay silent anymore. Preston Coleman Ashford was worth $18 billion. He'd built a social media empire from his Stanford dorm room, sold it for a fortune before he turned 30, then launched a dozen more companies. His name appeared in Forbes, the Wall Street Journal, magazine covers with words like visionary and disruptor and genius floating around his perfectly styled hair. His wife, Vivienne Laurent Ashford, was a former international fashion model turned philanthropist. They'd met at a charity gala in Monaco, married in a ceremony featured in Vanity Fair, and lived in a Central Park West penthouse worth $30 million that Architectural Digest had photographed for a cover story. They moved through the world with the absolute certainty that money solved all problems. Until tonight. The pregnancy had been difficult from the start. Vivian was 43, advanced maternal age in medical terminology. This was their first biological child after 5 years of fertility treatments. IVF, specialists, experimental procedures that cost more than most people earned in a lifetime. Preston had hired the best doctors money could buy, spared absolutely no expense. The nursery was designed by a celebrity designer, furniture handcrafted in Italy, the whole thing costing more than Eartha's lifetime earnings. When labor started, Preston arranged for the luxury birthing suite at Manhattan Memorial, a space that looked like a five-star hotel with massage chairs, mood lighting, marble bathroom, and a cappuccino machine. He'd assembled a dream team of obstetricians, 12 doctors total, Dr. Catherine Ashford from Yale, Dr. James Morrison from Johns Hopkins, Dr. Priya Chatterjee from Columbia, Dr. Robert Fletcher from Stanford, plus 8 more, each with prestigious degrees and decades of experience. For 43 hours, those 12 brilliant doctors had been losing. Eartha was mopping the hallway outside when the first crisis hit around hour 32. A nurse burst through the door, nearly knocked over her cleaning cart, shouting for an anesthesiologist. Eartha pressed herself against the wall, invisible as always, and watched the chaos unfold. Over the next 11 hours, she pieced together the crisis through overheard conversations. The baby was stuck. Every push dropped the heart rate dangerously. They'd tried everything: position changes, manual manipulation, medications to strengthen contractions, medications to relax the cervix. Nothing worked. Now they were discussing C-section, but there were complications. Vivian's blood pressure was dangerously high. She'd already lost more blood than was safe. Her body was so exhausted from the prolonged labor that surgery carried serious risks. The anesthesiologist was concerned about cardiac function. The surgical team was debating general versus local anesthesia. Eartha listened to all this and knew with bone-deep certainty exactly what the problem was. She heard it in the description of the baby's position, the pattern of heart rate drops, the way doctors described Vivian's back pain radiating down her legs. Posterior presentation, baby face up, spine against mother's spine, trying to navigate the pelvis at an impossible angle. It was a common problem, one her grandmother had taught her to fix when she was 14 years old. "You don't fight the baby, sugar," her grandmother used to say. "You dance with it. You find the rhythm of contractions, you feel where baby's shoulders are, and you guide. Gentle, gentle, like convincing a flower to open. Force makes it worse. Patience and skilled hands make it right." The 12 doctors inside were operating from textbooks and protocols, looking at numbers on screens, measurements from ultrasounds, data from monitors. But they couldn't feel what Eartha would feel if she put her hands on Vivian's belly. Couldn't sense the exact position of the baby's body, couldn't feel the subtle shifts indicating readiness to turn, couldn't communicate with their hands what their million-dollar machines were missing. The baby was running out of time, and Eartha knew she was the only person in this entire hospital who could save them. Eartha's first knock was tentative, not the confident rap of someone who belongs, but the hesitant tap of someone who knows they're crossing a line they were never meant to cross. The door cracked open. A nurse appeared, face exhausted, eyes stressed beyond measure. "What?" Her voice was sharp, no patience for interruptions. "I'm sorry to bother you, ma'am," Eartha said in her careful, proper English, the accent she'd tried for 17 years to smooth out, still clinging to her vowels. "But I hear the baby is stuck. I can help." The nurse blinked, taking in the custodian uniform, the faded scrubs, the ID badge that identified Eartha as housekeeping, not medical staff. "Ma'am, we have 12 of the best obstetricians in the country in there." "Yes, ma'am, I understand. But in Mississippi, before I came north, I was a midwife. I delivered many babies, many difficult births. I think I know what's wrong." The nurse's expression shifted from exhausted to annoyed, the particular irritation of someone dealing with one more problem she didn't need. "If 12 specialists can't figure it out, I don't think—" "The baby is posterior," Eartha interrupted, being bold now, knowing she was risking everything. "Face up, yes? The head is pressing on the mother's spine. This is why she has so much pain in her back, why the baby cannot come down." The nurse started closing the door. "Thank you for your concern, but we need to let the doctors—" "I can turn the baby," Eartha said urgently, words tumbling out before the door shut completely. With my hands from outside, no surgery needed. 10, maybe 15 minutes. I have done this many, many times. Ma'am, you need to step back and let us do our jobs. The door closed in Eartha's face. She stood there staring at the smooth wood, feeling the weight of her insignificance pressing down like Mississippi summer humidity. Thick, suffocating, inescapable. Of course they didn't listen. Why would they? She was nobody. A custodian, a black woman, a southerner with an accent. No diploma from a fancy university, no credentials framed on a wall. Her knowledge didn't come with the stamps the American medical system recognized. Her experience hadn't been validated by anyone who mattered. She was invisible, and invisible people don't get to save lives. Eartha picked up her mop and started to walk away. She'd tried. She'd spoken up. That was more than she usually did. She could go back to being invisible now, back to cleaning floors and staying silent and accepting her place in a world that had made very clear where that place was. Then she heard it through the closed door. Vivian screaming, not the productive labor screams Eartha had heard 1,000 times before, but desperate, terrified animal sounds of a woman pushed past all limits. Under those screams, Dr. Ashford's voice, tight with controlled panic. "We're losing fetal heart tones. We need emergency C-section now. Someone call surgical." Eartha stopped walking. Eartha turned around and knocked again. Harder this time, louder. Not asking for permission, demanding to be heard. The same nurse opened the door, face genuinely angry now. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to call security if you don't." "Let me try." Eartha's voice was different now. Not hesitant, not apologetic, not using her proper white folks English. This was the voice of a woman who delivered 80 babies before she turned 25. The voice that had saved mothers and children with nothing but hands and knowledge and absolute conviction. The voice her grandmother used when birth got complicated and lives hung in the balance. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. If I cannot help, then do your surgery. But if I can save this mother from being cut open, if I can save this baby from the risks of surgery, ain't 5 minutes worth it? The nurse was about to refuse. Eartha could see it in her face. But Dr. Ashford appeared behind her, and something in the doctor's expression made Eartha's heart jump. Not anger, desperation. "What did she say?" Dr. Ashford asked. "She thinks the baby is posterior and she can turn it manually," the nurse said, her tone making clear what she thought of that idea. Dr. Ashford looked at Eartha for a long moment, really seeing her for the first time. "You're the custodian." "Yes, ma'am, but in Mississippi, I was a midwife. I delivered many babies, many difficult presentations." "Do you have any medical credentials? Any formal training?" "I trained with my grandmother for 10 years. She delivered over 500 babies. I delivered more than 80 myself before I came north." Dr. Ashford's jaw tightened. Eartha could see the calculation happening. On one hand, this was absurd. You don't let a custodian touch a patient, especially a billionaire's wife in the middle of a crisis. On the other hand, they were out of options. The C-section could kill the mother. The baby was dying. And there was something in this woman's eyes, something calm and certain and utterly confident. "Dr. Ashford," the nurse protested, "you can't seriously be considering—" "How would you do it?" Dr. Ashford interrupted, eyes still on Eartha. The words came easier now. "I put my hands on the mother's belly. I feel where the baby's head is, where the shoulders are. Between contractions, when the uterus is soft, I apply gentle pressure to guide the baby to rotate. It doesn't hurt. The mother will feel my hands, but it's not painful. If the baby is ready to turn, it will turn. If not, I'll know in 5 minutes, and you can do your surgery." "And if something goes wrong?" "Nothing will go wrong," Eartha said simply. "I know what I'm doing." Commotion erupted behind Dr. Ashford. Preston Coleman Ashford appeared, designer suit rumpled, face haggard, eyes wild. "What's going on? Why are we standing here talking? My wife needs surgery now." Dr. Ashford turned to him. "Mr. Ashford, this woman believes she can turn your baby without surgery. Preston stared at Eartha like she'd materialized out of thin air. Took in the black woman, the custodian uniform, the mop and bucket, the southern accent. Who is she? His voice dripped with disbelief and barely concealed contempt. I'm a custodian here, sir, Eartha said, meeting his eyes steadily. But I used to be a midwife. A custodian? Preston's voice rose. You want my wife treated by the cleaning lady when we have 12 of the best doctors in the country here? Sir, Dr. Ashford said carefully, the surgery carries significant risk given your wife's current condition. If there's a chance to avoid it, no, Preston said flatly. Absolutely not. We're doing the surgery. I don't care about the risks. I want actual doctors treating my wife, not some... He stopped himself, but everyone knew what word he'd almost said. Everyone could hear it hanging in the air. Eartha felt the familiar weight settling back over her shoulders. She'd tried. She'd spoken up. She'd offered her knowledge. And like always, it wasn't enough. The rich white man had spoken, and his word was final. Then another voice cut through the tension. Weak, hoarse, but determined. Let her try. Everyone turned. Vivian was visible through the doorway, propped on pillows, face pale and drawn, hair matted with sweat. But her eyes were clear, focused on Eartha. Vivian, you don't understand, Preston started. I understand, Vivian interrupted with effort, that I've been in labor for almost 2 days. I understand that every intervention these doctors tried has failed. I understand that surgery right now could kill me. And I understand, she focused on Eartha, that this woman looks me in the eye like she actually knows what she's talking about. She locked eyes with Eartha. You really think you can turn my baby? Yes, ma'am, Eartha said. I am certain. Then do it, Vivian said. Please, I want to try. The delivery room fell silent. Preston looked at his wife, at the doctors, at Eartha, back at his wife. For a moment, Eartha thought he'd refuse, use his wealth and power to override even his wife's wishes. Then something shifted in his face. Maybe exhaustion, maybe desperation, maybe the first time in his life he'd encountered a problem his money couldn't immediately solve. 5 minutes, he said finally. You get 5 minutes. If it doesn't work, we go straight to surgery. Dr. Ashford nodded. Agreed, but I'll be monitoring everything. If I see anything concerning, we stop immediately. Eartha entered the delivery room. The room was enormous, a luxury hotel suite, not a medical space. Birthing tub in the corner, massage chair, mood lighting, art on the walls, medical equipment, state-of-the-art, machines monitoring every possible metric. And in the center of all this expensive technology, Vivian, a woman in agony, a mother trying desperately to bring her baby into the world. Eartha approached the bed slowly, her hands already sensing what they needed to do. She could see the shape of Vivian's belly, could read the baby's position in the way the abdomen was carrying, slightly lopsided, a hard spot on the left indicating where the baby's back was. Ma'am, I'm going to put my hands on you now, Eartha said gently, her Mississippi accent softening the words. I won't hurt you. I'm just feeling where your baby is. Vivian nodded, too exhausted to speak. Eartha placed her hands on Vivian's belly. Her hands, rough from 17 years of cleaning, calloused from chemicals, dark against Vivian's pale skin. Nothing like the smooth, gloved hands of the doctors who'd been examining her. But the moment her palms made contact with skin, something happened. Her grandmother called it the knowing, an instant connection between midwife and mother, between skilled hands and laboring body, information flowing both ways, sensing things no monitor could measure. She felt the baby immediately, head down, good, but rotated wrong, facing forward instead of toward the mother's spine, felt the shoulders, the curve of spine, the position of limbs, felt how the baby was wedged against the pelvis, unable to move down because the angle was wrong, and she felt something else. The baby was tired but not in distress. The baby was waiting for someone to help, someone to understand. Babies know things, her grandmother used to say. They know when people around them are fighting with their bodies instead of working with them. Sometimes you just gotta show baby the way. Okay, Eartha said softly, speaking to the baby as much as the mother. I understand. We're going to fix this now. A contraction started. Eartha kept her hands still, felt the wave of tension move through the uterus, felt the baby respond to the pressure. She waited patient until the contraction ended and the belly went soft. Then she began. Her hands moved with practiced confidence, finding the baby's shoulder through the abdominal wall. She applied gentle, steady pressure upward and to the right, not forcing, not pushing hard, suggesting, guiding. Having a conversation with the baby through touch and pressure and mysterious knowing. Come on now, little one, she murmured. Just a little turn, that's all. Just show me you can move. The 12 doctors crowded around, watching with expressions ranging from skeptical to curious to openly hostile. Dr. Morrison from Johns Hopkins practically vibrated with disapproval, but Dr. Ashford was watching Eartha's hands with intense focus. Eartha could tell the woman was actually seeing what she was doing, actually understanding the technique. Another contraction came. Eartha kept her hands steady, maintaining gentle pressure, working with the contraction, not against it. She felt the baby shift slightly, felt the head rotate a few degrees. Progress, small but real. It's working, Vivian gasped. I can feel it. The pain in my back, it's less. That's because baby is moving away from your spine, Eartha explained calmly. We're making space. Just breathe through this contraction. Good. Very good. The contraction ended. Eartha adjusted her hand position, found a new leverage point. This time she applied pressure in a slightly different direction, encouraging the baby to continue rotation. She could feel the baby responding now, could feel the small body turning in the cramped space of the pelvis. Baby's heart rate is improving, a nurse monitoring the fetal monitor announced, coming back up to 145. Fetal position is changing on ultrasound, another voice said. The baby's rotating. Preston moved closer, his face a mixture of disbelief and desperate hope. Is it really working? Yes, sir, Eartha said without stopping her work. Your baby is turning. Just a little more now. She worked in silence, hands reading signals none of the expensive equipment could detect. She felt the moment when the baby's head slipped past the tight spot in the pelvis. Felt the shoulders realign, felt the entire body shift into correct position. Face down now, chin tucked, ready to descend. There, Eartha said, pulling her hands back. It's done. Baby's in the right position now. Next contraction you push, and this baby will come. Dr. Ashford quickly did an internal examination. Her eyes went wide with shock. Full dilation. Baby's head is at +2 station. Presentation is now occiput anterior. She looked up at Eartha with something like awe. You did it. You actually did it. A contraction hit. This one different. Vivian's body, which had been fighting for 43 hours, suddenly knew exactly what to do. Exhaustion fell away, replaced by a surge of primal power. Push, Dr. Ashford commanded. Push now! Vivian pushed, and this time the baby descended. Moved down through the birth canal the way babies are supposed to when everything is aligned correctly. Another push, another foot of progress. The room erupted in controlled excitement. Doctors and nurses positioning themselves, preparing to catch the baby they'd all thought would need surgical removal. I can see the head, Dr. Ashford called out. One more push, Vivian. One more and your baby's here. Vivian screamed and pushed with everything she had left. And then suddenly, impossibly, after 43 hours of labor, after 12 doctors ran out of options, after a billionaire nearly lost everything that mattered, the baby slid into Dr. Ashford's waiting hands. The cry was immediate, loud, indignant. Perfect. It's a boy, Dr. Ashford said, voice thick with emotion. You have a healthy baby boy. The baby was perfect. 10 fingers, 10 toes, good color, strong cry. Dr. Ashford placed him on Vivian's chest. The room full of people who'd witnessed the impossible erupted in cheers and tears and relieved laughter. Preston collapsed into a chair, face in his hands, sobbing. Vivienne was crying too, holding her son, kissing his vernix-covered head, whispering words of love and relief and gratitude. And Eartha stood at the room's edge, worn hands at her sides, tears streaming down her face. She did it. After 17 years of being invisible, 17 years of cleaning floors while carrying the knowledge of generations, 17 years of silence, she finally used her gift again. Saved a mother and child, been a midwife again, honored her grandmother. Dr. Ashford walked over to her, eyes red, professional composure shattered by what she'd just witnessed. "That was extraordinary," she said quietly. "I've been practicing obstetrics for 23 years, and I've never seen anything like that. Where did you learn to do that?" "My grandmother," Eartha said, voice thick with emotion and pride. "She taught me that babies aren't problems to solve. They're people to guide. Sometimes the old ways work better than all the new machines." She looked at the baby boy in his mother's arms, thought about her grandmother who would never meet him, but whose wisdom had just saved his life. Thought about 5 generations of Black women whose knowledge had just proved itself in this white temple of modern medicine. Thought about all the years she'd stayed silent, made herself small, accepted the lie that she didn't matter, and she thought, never again, never silent again. The delivery room transformed from crisis to jubilation. Baby Preston Jr., called PJ, was healthy and nursing within the hour. Vivienne required only minor stitches, her body recovering remarkably fast once the prolonged labor ended. The 12 doctors who couldn't solve the problem stood in small groups, some discussing what they'd witnessed, others openly studying their shoes in embarrassment. Dr. Morrison from Johns Hopkins was the first to leave, muttering about catching a flight, disappearing without a word. But Dr. Ashford stayed, so did Dr. Chatterjee and several others. They watched Eartha with new eyes now, seeing her for the first time as something other than the invisible woman who cleaned their floors. Eartha tried to slip away quietly. She'd done what needed doing. Now she wanted to return to familiar invisibility before anyone decided she'd overstepped too badly. She picked up her abandoned cleaning cart from the hallway, but Dr. Ashford came after her. "Wait, please don't go yet." Eartha turned, heart hammering. This was it. This was when she'd be told she was fired, facing legal consequences. But Dr. Ashford's face wasn't angry. "I need to ask you something. How many times have you done that? The manual rotation technique?" "Many times, ma'am. In Mississippi, posterior babies were common. We didn't have surgery, so we learned to turn them." "And your success rate?" "I never lost a baby because of wrong position. Sometimes they couldn't turn, and then we'd make the mother work harder, change positions many times. But always the baby came." "Always?" Dr. Ashford shook her head slowly. "Do you realize what you have? The knowledge you carry? That technique you just used is mentioned in some older obstetric texts, but it's considered outdated. Most modern obstetricians don't even learn it anymore. We go straight to C-section for persistent posterior presentations." Her voice caught. "But what you did in there, you made it look easy. You knew exactly where to put your hands, exactly how much pressure, exactly when to push and when to wait. That's not luck. That's skill. That's mastery." Eartha didn't know what to say. For 17 years, she'd been told in 1,000 unspoken ways that her knowledge was worthless, that her experience didn't count, that she needed to stay in her place and let the real professionals handle important work. Now this doctor, this highly educated, prestigious physician, was looking at her with something like reverence. "I learned from the best teacher," Eartha said finally. "My grandmama was a great midwife. She taught me to listen to the baby, to feel what's happening, not just look at machines." "Would you?" Dr. Ashford hesitated, then pushed forward. "Would you be willing to teach others? What you did tonight, it's not just about this one baby. There are thousands of women who end up with unnecessary C-sections because of posterior presentations. If we could learn your technique, if we could teach it to other doctors, you could change obstetric care." Before Eartha could respond, Preston Ashford appeared in the hallway. He'd cleaned up, changed into fresh clothes, but his eyes were still red from crying. He walked straight to Eartha and did something that shocked everyone watching. He knelt down in front of her. This billionaire worth $18 billion, wearing a suit that cost more than Eartha's annual salary, dropped to his knees in the hospital hallway and looked up at the custodian who'd saved his family. "I don't know how to thank you," Preston said, voice breaking. "I almost lost them both tonight. My wife, my son, everything that matters. And you," tears streaming, "you saved them when nobody else could. And I was ready to throw you out of the room. I was ready to call you." He stopped himself. "Please stand up." "Sir," Eartha said, deeply uncomfortable with a white billionaire kneeling before her. "No," Preston said firmly, though he did stand. "You did something extraordinary. You have a gift." He paused, choosing words carefully. "I've spent my whole life believing that the best knowledge, the most valuable expertise, comes from the places I expected. The best universities, the most prestigious institutions, the people with the right credentials. And I was wrong. I was so wrong." He pulled out his phone. "What's your full name?" "Eartha Mae Williams, sir." Preston typed something, then showed her the screen. "Bank transfer to her account, $100,000. Eartha's knees nearly gave out. "Sir, I cannot. This is too much. I was just—" "That's not payment," Preston interrupted. "That's just to start to say thank you. To make sure you're okay while we figure out what comes next." He looked at Dr. Ashford. "I want to fund a program, a birthing center maybe, somewhere that combines traditional knowledge with modern medicine, somewhere that values wisdom no matter where it comes from." He looked back at Eartha. "And I want you to be part of it, to teach, to practice, to share what you know." "I'm not a licensed doctor," Eartha said. "I can't practice medicine in America." "Then we'll figure out how to change that," Preston said. "Or we'll create a role that doesn't require a license. Cultural birth specialist, traditional midwife consultant. I don't care what we call it. What I care about is making sure that what you know doesn't disappear." He stopped, recalibrated. "What I'm trying to say is that tonight you showed me something I'd forgotten. That knowledge comes from lots of places. That expertise isn't always stamped with official approval. That sometimes the person who can solve your problem is the person you've been trained not to see." Eartha stood there, tears streaming, the world shifting under her feet. For the first time in 17 years, someone powerful was listening to her. For the first time, her knowledge mattered. For the first time, she wasn't invisible. 2 years later, Eartha Mae Williams stood on stage at Columbia University's medical school. She wore professional clothes now, though she still felt most comfortable in scrubs, and the auditorium was packed. Medical students, doctors, midwives, traditional birth attendants from around the country. They'd come for a symposium on integrating traditional and modern obstetric practice, and Eartha was the keynote speaker. She never imagined herself here, a poor black woman from a Mississippi sharecropper family addressing some of the country's most prestigious medical professionals. But Dr. Ashford had insisted, Preston's foundation sponsored it, and Vivian's Grandmama Williams Foundation had brought traditional practitioners from around the world. Eartha stepped to the podium, looked at the sea of faces, and took a deep breath. "My name is Eartha Mae Williams. 2 years ago, I was a custodian. I mopped floors and cleaned bathrooms, and was invisible to most people in hospitals like this." She paused, letting that sink in. "But I carried something nobody saw. I carried the knowledge of 5 generations of black women midwives, taught to me by my grandmother who delivered over 500 babies with nothing but her hands, and her wisdom and her love." She gathered her courage. "My grandmother learned from her grandmother, who learned from hers. Our knowledge traces back to enslaved women who became midwives because they had to, because white doctors wouldn't touch black bodies, because our communities had to figure out how to bring babies into the world, or die trying." Her voice strengthened. "For 17 years I stayed silent. I watched women suffer in birth. I watched doctors struggle with complications I knew how to fix. And I said nothing, because I believed the lie, that my knowledge didn't matter, that I was nobody, that people like me should stay invisible and let the experts handle the important work. Then one night I heard a woman screaming. I heard a baby dying. And I had to choose, stay invisible and safe, or speak up and risk everything. I chose to speak up, and that choice changed my life. But more importantly, it started a conversation about whose knowledge matters, about where expertise comes from, about the wisdom we lose when we decide that only certain people with certain credentials from certain places get to be experts. Her voice grew more powerful. The knowledge my grandmother taught me is not superstition. It's not folklore. It's wisdom refined through generations, tested on thousands of bodies, proven effective by results that speak for themselves, and it deserves respect. She looked out at the audience, some nodding, some wiping tears, some leaning forward hungry for more. I'm standing here today because one woman, Vivian Ashford, chose to trust me when the whole world said she shouldn't. Because one doctor, Dr. Catherine Ashford, chose to learn instead of dismiss. Because one man, Preston Ashford, chose to use his privilege to amplify voices like mine instead of silence them. But mostly I'm standing here because my grandmother taught me that knowledge is sacred, that the wisdom of our ancestors matters, that sometimes the person who looks least like an expert is exactly the expert you need. The auditorium erupted in applause, standing ovation that lasted 3 minutes. Eartha looked out at them through tears, thought about her grandmother who would never see this moment, but whose hands had made it possible. Thought about the invisible women still mopping floors in hospitals across America, carrying knowledge nobody sees. Thought about the revolution that starts when one person refuses to stay silent. In the front row, little PJ sat on his mother's lap, 2 years old now, clapping his chubby hands. The baby who shouldn't have survived. The miracle that changed everything. Eartha smiled through her tears. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is knock on a door you were never supposed to open. If this story moved you, if you believe knowledge matters no matter where it comes from, subscribe to this channel, leave a comment, and turn on notifications because every story we share is another door opening, another voice being heard, another revolution beginning. See you in the next one.